Welcome back to the Police Recruiting Show. Thanks for joining us again. Once again, I have Doug Larsen, CEO of Safeguard Recruiting. It's the only law enforcement owned and operated recruiting company directly to law enforcement. They're staffing up agencies all across America. Pretty impressive stuff. And Doug, I wanted to kind of go back to last week's video. And so if you haven't watched that one, you don't have to watch it for this one, but it's sort of parlays. I had this great conversation with a recruiter. It's a department in the Midwest. And I was very impressed this single recruiter was getting anywhere between 20 and 40 applications a month. And he said it to me. And then I immediately said, well, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm going to job fairs. I'm doing this. And he wasn't really doing anything extra or doing anything that we do. And I thought, man, what is going on? How is this happening? Right. And finally, I asked him about his website and whether he had an applicant tracking system. Because Doug, obviously you offer that applicant tracking system. You know the importance of that, of being able to track those candidates and message them and text them. And oftentimes you just throw that in with your campaigns because it's so valuable. And he says, well, on our website, when you click the, do you want to apply here? He goes, a form comes up and you fill out just a quick name, email, and phone number. And then it immediately asks you what day you want to test, and it schedules a test. And I said, hold on here, because this is different than what we've dealt with many of our clients. And I want to kind of back up. You always talk about touch points, Doug. Let's tell our audience why you need to limit touch points, because this story I just told you, the reason he was getting the number of applicants he was getting is because he had limited his touch points to one. And we always are trying to get our clients down to one touch point. But because of a bunch of issues, sometimes it's HR, sometimes it's existing software, we can't always do it. But this really showed me the power of one touch point. And so before I sort of, continue to speak about how he said being successful about this one thing, talk about the importance of these touch points and why it matters so much.
Yeah, and so what you're talking about is that whole application process and gathering of information, and it can be confusing to apply for a job in law enforcement and understand the process all the way through, and very stressful for the person. I mean, I don't understand why it takes so long for law enforcement to get back to them that. And what we find out a lot of times is, sure, you get sent some information saying, hey, I'm interested in working for this department, and they have to go to another website, register, fill out a form, fill out an application there, and then come back over to the department's website information. And the more of those processes in your steps these people have to take, the less successful you are in capturing that person as a full applicant.
Yeah, I mean, we are always, the first thing we try to do when we get a new client is we limit the touch points, because typically, and this is the worst case example, we send the names and information to the department, but they can't take the test until they fill out a full application. So they've got to go to another website to do that. Some websites make them register, which is another touch point. Then they got to go to their email and confirm the registration, which is another touch point. Then they go in and fill the application out, which is typically very lengthy, right? And then they have to hit it. Then once the application is received from the department, then the department has to reach out or send them another email to sign up for the test. So that's another touch point. And people just are not willing to do that. That's why in the business world, you do not see those kind of touch points happening in online, businesses and merchandise and shopping. I mean, it's Amazon pioneered the one-click pay button, right? Where you click a button one time and you literally purchase the item. And they did that because it increased sales dramatically by limiting touch points. Now, some departments are limited, right? We have to use this because HR says we have to use this, and we can't test until we get the application. We can't do this. But I would ask them to consider, do you want to stay doing the way things have always been done and get very limited applications, or would you like to work on limiting the touch points like this department did, and it explodes? And really, to me, I thought it was phenomenal. I even asked the guy, Doug, I said, was that your idea to go one touch point? This guy never heard touch points. He just said, no, that's just the way it was when I got here, right? So somebody down the line recognized the importance of this, because I told him this. If you had just one extra touch point where you got their name, but then they have to, go to another website to sign up for the test, I said, you lose half right there. You would lose half right there. I go, you add another touch point on top of that, you're losing another half. So this guy is maximizing the applicants by simply limiting it to one touch point.
And that's great. And we see it a lot in government where that's just not going to work because of the HR departments. And I'll give you an example of one of the largest departments in the United States that works with this, and they have some issues with this. They get people that fill out a little short interest form and they think that's enough, that they've applied. Well, it's not. They haven't applied. They have to go to the next port, get to a link, got to register. They got to get inside there. And every time you do that and you add length to it, then it's more likely somebody's going, well, I don't have time to do this right now. Maybe I'll come back to it if I remember. And then it creates some issues there. And also what we see too is some departments have just some massive applications, like 50, 60 pages long. And if you don't fill that out, they feel like you're not interested. Well, on the flip side, you got to look at from the candidate's point of view. Like, well, how interested is the department in me? This is a lot of time to fill out 60 pages. There's got to be a way to make those two work together. So yeah, we're mutually interested in each other. Let's get this relationship down the road before, I don't want to automatically disqualify you because you didn't fill out my 60-page application, and vice versa.
Well, I love the process, and he's still. I talked to him. There's a few more things he can do to maximize things, and I talked about our referral program, which puts this on steroids with names. But I love the idea of they schedule the test in that first touch point. Then when they show up to the test, that's when they can fill out all the paperwork, right? Because you're right there. You can help them with it instead of relying on them doing it, off on a laptop or a phone somewhere else. And so then there's that immediate personal connection. That's why he's getting the applications he's getting. And he's even making phone calls once they, right before the test to make sure they're reminded by it. He's sending them emails. This kid is doing everything. I call him a kid. He's much younger than me. I'm very impressed because, as we've talked about in the past, Doug, they don't give recruiters basic certifications or trainings. That's why we offer that 2-hour seminar on our website. It gives a lot of information, and it's the closest thing to a certification you'll find out there because there's no recruiting conferences. There's no recruiting certifications, and we're going to look into that because we have to give these folks, more tools and resources. But to me, it's amazing. There's so many departments struggling with they just would fix a couple of things in the process. They may not get all the way there, and this kid isn't all the way there. We're going to come alongside and help him get all the way there, but he's doing so much better than I think that he normally would have been.
Yeah, there's some departments doing an excellent job with their recruiting and keeping people engaged, and I love to hear it and I love to see it. And for those that are new in there, we can help with your learning curve, accelerate that so you hit the ground running and are successful a lot quicker.
Yeah, give him a call, folks. Doug Larsen, CEO, Safeguard Recruiting. It's amazing stuff. Have hope. They're staffing up agencies all across the country. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.